Everyone wants to scale their business, but there are many issues that can come with scale. And in a recent interview with my friend Alex Charfen, he shared with me the number one red flag that anybody wanting to scale their business needs to be looking out for. This is so important for you to pay attention to, and Alex is speaking from a place of experience. It caused him a great deal of pain to not pay attention to this red flag, so we are giving you a heads up. When you go in and you're looking operationally at a business that has scaled fast or is on the verge of scaling, are there any red flags that you can just immediately see that people need to be looking out for?
When you say immediate red flags, I think in my experience, when an entrepreneur who has never scaled a business before reaches a new level, when they go first time that they hit 7 figures or first time that they hit 3 million or 10 million or any of those things, there's a lot of uncertainty and there's not a lot of clarity of what to do next. And what I see consistently in those places is that the majority of entrepreneurs got there by doing more of what they're doing, by putting more time in, by putting more effort in, by putting more energy in. And gosh, Shanna, these days in the entrepreneurial world and in the world of rhetoric in our lives, there is so many people saying, if you want success, just work harder. If you want success, sacrifice more. If you want success, give up more. And then 100%. And every time I see them, I'm like, wait a second, you don't really understand entrepreneurs because we work ourselves to death. And so I don't know a lot of entrepreneurs that need to hear the message, work harder. I know a lot of entrepreneurs that need to hear the message, you don't have to work this hard. And I think that this constant reinforcement of if I put in more effort, I'm going to have everything that I want and things are going to get easier is an absolute false prophecy, a false promise, because as entrepreneurs, as visionaries, we need way more help than the average person to get to the outcomes we want, to create the change we want in the world. And we have a really hard time asking for help. It's just, I call it the entrepreneur's dilemma. We need more help than the average person, but any request that we make for help or support of any kind leaves us feeling vulnerable and exposed. And as a result, I see entrepreneurs who have done everything it takes to get a business off the ground. And what does that mean? It takes everything. You have to do everything when you start a company. But that also psychologically conditions us that no matter how big that company is, we have to be involved in everything. We have to be doing everything. We have to be checking everything. We have to be seeing everything. And that becomes the biggest constraint. To me, that is the biggest red flag. When I see a business that's growing and I ask the entrepreneur, what role do you play? And they say, well, I kind of look at everything and I kind of do everything. You are already in a place where any type of scale is going to cause you pain. And unfortunately, we're in a world where oftentimes when you're at a mastermind or an event, the person on stage who's talking about how successful they are and giving advice is also the person who's in the most pain. And I'm not going to, certainly wouldn't ever name names, but there's been too many times where I'm in a room and I see a person on stage and I'm like, wow, I know that person. I know the pain they're going through. I know the stress they're going through. I know the frustration they're going through. I know just how close they are right now to shutting everything down. In fact, yesterday in the hallway, they told me they're having the fantasy of going back to doing it all themselves. And now they're on stage telling everybody else what to do. And I think that as entrepreneurs, we need to understand that doing more and putting more of yourself in and just working harder is an equation that only goes in one direction. If you're going to work harder the whole time, just putting in your time, you're going to end up in a place where there's the day where you can't do more and the day where you can't work harder and the day where there's not 10 minutes more. And that's when things come crashing down oftentimes for entrepreneurs. That's when they finally realize hey, I can't do this. I can't sustain this. I know this intimately because I've done it. In my 20s, I ran a business where it was a consultancy and we worked with major brands here in the US and internationally. And then we marketed them in Florida and the Southeast United States and in Latin America. I had offices throughout Latin America. I had a few offices in the US. I had a pretty large team, but I built the business directly around me. It was like my entire team was assistants and I was still doing everything. And the level of stress that I was under, the level of pressure that I was under from the outside looking in, I looked very successful. I had a multi-million-dollar business. We were doing $250 million in sales. I had a large team. From the inside, I felt like an imposter anytime anybody asked about my business. I was afraid to talk about it because it was so hard to run. By the time I was 30, I weighed over almost 300 pounds. I was on prescription medications. My doctor told me I was his next likely case for a heart attack or a stroke. My blood pressure was off the charts, even medicated. I was in a terrible place because I had bought in to this myth that if you work harder and you start building a team and work harder and you start growing that team and work harder and you start scaling the company and work harder, that if you just work hard, you're going to get everything you want. And there was a day shortly after I met my wife, Katie, where I got up in the morning and the entire business just became confronting. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to feel like an imposter. I don't want to be overwhelmed every day. And I built myself into a place where in that business, I couldn't see a way to fix it. And so I did a fire sale. I exited the business for a lot less than what I should have or what I could have. I absolutely should have exited the business. I don't want to say that. I'm so glad that I did. It was life-changing, but it was because I didn't understand that if I didn't get help and if I didn't delegate first responsibility and then delegate time and then delegate success, that I was going to end up responsible for everything. I was going to be in the chair for everything. And it was one of the most challenging times of my life to have that realization and then to get out of this business that I built for 10 years.